Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another piano lesson with Warren. My name is Warren McPherson. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Malcolm from out of Thailand. Yes, this image that you're seeing behind me was sent to me from Malcolm, and he's in eastern northeast Thailand. It's beautiful, huh? So I'm still putting the request out there for those of you who want to be a part of this sort of image sharing community. I'll be using images from you guys in my tutorial, so you can just shoot me whatever sunset images you have, or sunrise, or just beautiful images from wherever you are around the world. Send it to my email at war85ren@gmail.com. And I'll be sure to feature your image, and I'll definitely give you a shout out. Okay, in today's tutorial, I want to talk about 17 music terms that you should know. These are popular terms that you'll hear pass around in music settings, in rehearsals, and I just think these are terms you should know what the meaning of these words and how they fit into music. So I wrote down 17 of them. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I think these terms, the ones that I'll be getting into in a bit, are used on a frequent basis, and therefore you should know the differences of the terminologies and help you to speak the music language. Okay, so the first one is interval. What is an interval? You know, if you hear that word being used around in the music setting, you need to know that an interval is just basically the distance between 2 points in music. C to G is an interval. C to A is an interval. So it's just the distance we use in music to measure pitches, the distance from one pitch to another, and that's called an interval. And there are different types of interval: seconds, thirds, fourths, fifth, sixths, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th. We generally stop at the 13th. We don't go 14th. You know, instead of calling it a 14th, we call this a compound 7, compound octave, compound ninth, and so on. So that's basically what interval describes. And then you can go a little bit further and talk about augmented fourth, augmented fifth, or minor sixth, minor sevenths, and so on. So interval, the distance between 2 points. Going down the line, number 2, inversions. What is an inversion? What does it mean to invert something? So typically you can invert an interval. You can also invert a chord. For example, if I take this major third and I invert the interval by either taking the root and putting it at the top, I just invert that third, and now this interval becomes a sixth. See? Specifically, it becomes a minor sixth. When you invert a major third, it becomes a minor sixth. I could also take in the E, play it below. I inverted the interval. A quick little trick I want to talk to you about inversion. Whenever you take an interval and you invert it, that interval plus its inversion add together should give you 9. For example, if I take a third and I invert it, I get a sixth. 6 plus 3, 9. If I take a fourth and I invert it, I get a fifth. 5 plus 3 equal 9. So basically, whenever you take an interval that is smaller than 9 and you invert it and add them together, you should get 9. So that's just a cool little trick right there. Going down the line, oh, by the way, let's talk about chord inversions. So if I have a chord, a triad, I can invert it. Take the root note, put it at the top, and that's the chord now is in first inversion. Take this note, put it at the top, the chord now is in second inversion. And if I do that again, the chord's in root position. So that's how chord inversion works. Number 3, we have a chord. What is a chord? This is not a chord. A chord has to be a minimum of 3 notes. 3 notes and above, we call it a chord. If it's just 2 notes, that's just harmony. It's not a chord, so that's a good thing to note. Let's talk about quality. In music, when we use the word quality in relation to, say, an interval quality or a chord quality, what are we referring to? We're talking about whether the chord is a major, a minor, a diminished, or an augmented. So if I play these two notes, they're an interval, eh? So if I say, what's the quality of the interval? You'd say it's a perfect fifth. If I play these two notes, it's an interval, and I say, what's the quality of this interval? You'd say an octave, and so on. If I take a chord, I say, what's the quality of this chord? You'd say, oh, it's a major chord. What's the quality of that chord? It's minor. What's the quality of that chord? It's augmented, and the quality of that chord is diminished. So whenever someone asks for the quality of an interval of a chord, that's what they're asking about, if it's major, minor, diminished, or augmented. Let's take a look, going down the line, a scale. And when we talk about a scale is basically a sequence of notes played one after the other. And I think the scale with the least amount of notes that we have is a pentatonic scale, which is just a 5-note scale. So a scale is just a sequence of notes played in succession, one after the other. Unison. What is a unison? We say unison. Unison just means multiple persons singing the same pitch or multiple instruments playing the same note. That's called a unison. So it could be at different registers too. It's all unison, just at different pitches. It's not harmony, it's unison, because it's the same pitch. So that's how the word unison is used and interpreted. Harmony. Harmony, it's an easier one. Most people are familiar with this. Harmony is just 2 or more notes. So that's a harmony. This is also a harmony, but it's also a chord. It's a specific type of harmony. So harmony is just having 2 or more pitches, different pitches, I should say, because we talked about these being unison because they're the same pitch at different registers. Harmony, you need to have different pitches. Let's go down the line now, the chromatic. When we talk about chromatic in Western music, we're talking about half steps. In Western music, that's the smallest distance we can move on the piano. And so we have the chromatic scales where we play all the 12 pitches on the piano. We call that the chromatic scale. So if someone say move chromatically, ascending chromatically means going to your right in half steps. Descending chromatically, going to your left in half steps. Going down the line, a whole step or a tone. A whole step is basically 2 half steps. 1 half step, 2 half step. And so you might hear these 2 words used interchangeably. Someone say move up a step. A step is the same thing as a whole step, or a tone. Someone might use the word a tone. They're referring to moving up 2 half steps. Going down the line, a progression. Someone asked me this earlier, what's the meaning of the word progression? And if there's a particular order to a progression. No. A progression is just a fancy word to describe a series of chord changes. So basically, I was playing As the Dare earlier. That's a progression. And so if someone say, what's the progression of this song? They're asking you what are the chords of the song that you're playing. So progression doesn't have to be a particular order. As long as you have 2 or more chords changing, we call that a progression. It's moving. Chord extension. So when you hear about extensions on chords, basically chords that exceeds a 7. So let's take C. This is called a C7. Once I get above C7 with like C9, C7 sharp 11, or C7 sharp 9 sharp 5, you know, once you get into those chords, A13 at 9, yeah? Or the, let me see, the D minor 11th, all of those chords, you know, once they exceed a 7th, we call those extensions on the chord. And so when they say, can you extend that chord? Chord extensions is basically talking about jazz chords, all that complex stuff, yeah? Moving along, a turnaround. It's common in jazz. You use it a lot in blues. So we go to the 5. We call it a turnaround. So we're basically going back to 5, which will take us back to 1. 5, 4, we call it a turnaround. Also, I used the turnaround in As the Deer when I was playing earlier. As the deer panted for the waters on my soul, long and after, turn around, thee. And what I did right there was just go to the 3, F sharp minor to the 6, B minor to the 2, E minor, and to the 5, A. And that's a turnaround. 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. Sometimes they might skip the 3 and just go straight to the 2, the 5, and the 1. Again, use the Latin jazz. That's called a turnaround. It's optional. I could have gone, long and after thee, you, but it sounds not so interesting. Use a turnaround now, you can even put some extensions on that turnaround. Long and after thee, you alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. So that's what a turnaround is. Modulation, I did a tutorial on this a few weeks ago. And the difference between modulation and transposition, some people get those terminologies confused. Modulation is when you're in one key and you decide to go up a half step or a whole step to another key. You know, so I can do long and after thee, you alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I love you. I just modulated a half step. Modulated, not transposed. Transposition now is when we take the entire song and put it in a new key. For example, if you're playing As a Deer in D and the singer says, can you put that song in E? Now you're transposing the song to E. As the deer panted for the waters of my soul, long and after thee, yeah. Transposition. And so if you were writing out the chords for like horn players or bandmates, you know, you would transpose, you'd use your 4 sharps, you know, you transpose a song entirely into a new key. Transposition doesn't also have to be a whole step or a half step. You could transpose it a 4th up or a 5th down, you know. As long as it's being lifted from one key to another, we call that transposition. Transcription, not a term that gets misused, basically just means to transcribe, to write out what you hear. And so transcription is also used not only in music but in literature. A lot of secretaries sometimes have to transcribe notes for their bosses. It's the same thing. You're basically listening to something and you're writing it out. Transcription. Syncopation. What is a syncopation? So in music, take say 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, we have a steady form of the beats. Generally, this first beat, beat 1 is a strong beat. Beat 2 is lighter. Beat 3 is a little heavier. Beat 4 is lighter. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Syncopation now is when you start mess with that order and you start shifting around what we call emphasis and downbeats and putting it on the ands or on a different part of the measure where it doesn't fit. And so if I want to take this as a there and syncopate it, I can go. As the deer panted for the waters of my soul, long and after thee. So you shift the beats around, and that's what they call syncopation. Used a lot in funk and modern gospel. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to explain today, cadences. I did a video on some cool ways you can end songs, call it cool cadences. And cadences is just basically closure, coming to an end, a cadence. And in Western music, especially in the classical circle, there are 3 mainly described cadences. The first one that we call a perfect cadence. And so, again, using as the there, you alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. 5 going to 1. They call that a perfect cadence. Then you have the plagal cadence, and it's also referred to sometimes as the church cadence, where you go, where am I in the song? Alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. That's sort of amen. They call it the amen cadence. That's what I was looking for. It goes to 4 and then to 1. They call that the plagal cadence. Then you have the deceptive cadence. And my video that I did is sort of, was around this concept of deceptive cadence, where you can go all different sorts of places. And they call it deceptive because the audience generally don't know where it's going. Going anywhere besides 4 or 5 is where they call the deceptive cadence. Or even an expounding on the going to 4 and then somewhere else, we call that deceptive. Oftentimes, in its most basic form, deceptive cadence is going to 6. Desire and I long to worship you. Deceptive cadence, I just went to the 6. Or to worship you. I just went to the sharp 5, flat 7, 1. So all of those are called deceptive cadence. Okay, folks, that is it. But these terms, I believe, are terms you should know, because you're going to come across them at some point, and you want to know the differences and what they mean, how to utilize them on the piano, because you can definitely use them to enhance your playing. There are a lot more out there, for sure, and I'll probably do another video on them in the future. But for now, if you're not familiar with these, start checking them out, read upon them, practice some of these concepts. And if there's any terminologies that you've come across and you don't know it, post it in the comment section. I'd like to hear what you guys think, or just if there's any that I have not covered. Obviously, there's a lot of them. Post them in the comment section. Okay, until then, my name is Warren McPherson. Thank you for watching. My website, pianolessonwithwarren.com. As always, I post free downloadable tutorials over there and paid tutorials. The tutorial that I'm currently working on, paid tutorial, is the intermediate's guide to learning the piano. That's going to be a very intense course, and I'll definitely let you guys know more about that when it's ready. Again, the sun sets. I would love to see some pictures from you guys from around the world, so send them my way, war85ren@gmail.com. Until then, keep singing, keep listening, and keep practicing. Catch you on the flip side. Have a good day.